Viewers, how are y'all doing? I think y'all can take a guess of what today's footage is just from the thumbnail or the title. Let me see if I can refresh my screen to get it so I can see the screen. Because I really hope this works. We haven't done this method since the God of War runs, so if that don't tell you how long it's been a while. Now I'm using this format because this allows me to record a lot longer than my current recording equipment. Sorry. But, well, how I'll be doing this is basically explaining time travel, what Sora is, and his relation to what I think that dude is. And if you don't know who that dude is, a long time ago there existed a being called the Master of Masters. Sorry. A long time ago there existed a being called the Master of Masters. He created the Keyblades, okay? We'll get to Old Mum in a minute. Alright. I have about 6 pages of notes just on this little dude alone, on time travel alone. Alright. 1. Let's get this out of the way. I've always said I don't like Nomura's writing style because he's a bit of a troll. Okay, that's one of my big muffins out of the way. Second, when Kingdom Hearts was first made, I do not think that this was intended to be a franchise. It wasn't. I don't give a crap what they say on interviews. I don't think this was meant to be a franchise. Because when we saw the trailers back in the PS2, or images, trailers didn't exist, I forgot, internet was bad back in the aughts. You just basically saw Disney characters and Final Fantasy characters, and people are just like, what is this mess? What is it? What is this mess I am looking at? So, there's that. Oh, I saw some people pop up. I can definitely see you on chat. I have a secondary screen pulled up, so this is just clear for purposes later. But that guy in the hood, we got a lot to say about that guy in the cloak, because he plays a big part in the time travel. We also found out some more stuff about time travel with the DLC that is soon to come out for Kingdom Hearts 3. Fun. Oh, I keep losing my train of thought. Today's been one of those days. But anyway, pen and paper, we get Kingdom Hearts. Okay, Kingdom Hearts 1 sold like hotcakes, so I'm pretty sure the more of them were like, okay, let's create this, and then we have Chain of Memories, blah 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 that. But Nomura has, he gets way too much credit. He's like Kojima. If you don't get the reference, he's like Kojima and George Lucas. They get way too much credit. Because in case you don't know, it takes a lot of work, more than one man to make a video game. Okay. On to time travel. Oh, what is Sora? That's going to come after the time travel segment. Time travel is a skill. Now you're probably going to go, what do you mean by skill? Anybody can learn time travel in this setting, apparently. This is not a Keyblade. It's not like a Keyblade where you have to have a specific use of it to be passed down to. No, this is a certain skill. And a person like Idiot Yen Sid can probably do it. We know Maleficent can use it. Yes, I said Maleficent because in Union Cross she somehow is able to do this. Don't ask. I don't want to know. But that's one thing. And a lot of... But it's not... And we know Xehanort uses this method. Now, it's an extremely dangerous method. I think the reason no one wants to do it is because there are way too many risks involved and way too many problems involved. Number 1, to time travel, because I wrote down the rules, go figure. Okay, first time we ever met, first we have to establish that rule number 1 basically is you have to get rid of your body and reduce yourself to just a heart. Then you have to go to your heart that's flowing through time somehow, can only go to a point where you already exist at that moment. DDD, this is how the time travel is implemented for the sleeping world. Ansem, hi emoji, Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, was already there. He was the hooded robe guy you saw who gave Sora a lecture in the cave. And if you don't know, the hooded dude is Xehanort reduced strictly to a heart. That is, you being in a certain place at a certain time has to make you have an anchor point if you're just a heart going backward and forward through time. Now there's actually two methods. This is, we found out later of the second method, but this is the method Xehanort used throughout Kingdom Hearts series. Was this. Now they broke the rules that they established basically for in KH3, and KH3 is its own bag of worms, but we're discussing time travel, strictly the deep dream drop distance and above. This little scene is from back cover. Back cover involves What is Sora, so, man, that hooded dude. We'll get to him. We'll get a lot to say. So, for rules of time, I've already said, you have to have an anchor and you have to have a point. Okay, that's the problem. If you reduce your heart to heart, that's pretty risky, okay? So, we got that. I also put a second note. Traverse Town, if anybody knows what Traverse Town is like a crux point for Sora. He's always ended up in Traverse Town. It's every start of his journey, he ends up in Traverse Town. I would almost say that's like an anchor point for Sora. If he ever did manage to use time travel, this method, he could always rely on Traverse Town because that's like his one anchor point. I want to quote something that I wrote practically word for word that Xehanort says, old Xehanort says, and this involves time travel, and this actually ties into the concept of fate. Oh, but fate is not left to chance. I merely guided them to their proper place. The broken boy who failed to be the blade, the misguided master who sacrificed herself to save a friend, and the feckless youth who would become my new vessel. Meaning all those events that Xehanort caused in BBS, Birth by Sleep, that was all going to happen. It's a straight line paradox. So, the version they use, basically, he can go as far forward as he can, I guess, maybe to your death point, I'm not sure. Given what happened to Xehanort, which I won't spoil, in KH3, I don't know if you saw that, but he basically could see as far as he wanted to. But he also states, Xehanort states, young Xehanort, where are we at? I have 5 pages of notes, okay? Sorry. Oh, come on, I know you're here. I wrote how about the line. See, this is why this is going to be really weird. Oh, yes. You can move in time, but you cannot change it. That is one of the laws that they established in this. Old Cloakman, will be getting back to him and Sora in a minute. So time is almost immovable. You can move as far as you want in time, but you can't change it. So whenever he stops his time travel, he will revert back to where he came from, the youngest form of Xehanort, which his heart met. Old Xehanort's heart met young Xehanort, which kickstarted this whole thing via this method. So that is how young Xehanort did this whole shenanigans. Yes, I used the word shenanigans. Now, what is Sora? What does that play into? But yeah, well, Sora is also a theory. Okay. I'm sorry, I have a lot of notes that I took when this, but DDD kicks off with them having to use time travel already. Okay. And the reason why Ansem, or Xehanort was able to catch Sora and DDD is because when they started their journey and started Destiny Islands, and they started at a point where Xehanort was already there. He was there when Riku opened the door and all that stuff. He was the hooded dude in the thing. He was there when Kairi caught. It's very interesting in that concept alone, but I'll dissect more of that in there. Now, what does this have to do with the Master of Masters and what Sora is? Well, there were a couple lines in DDD as I was watching it. Dream Drop Distance, that's what DDD stands for, okay? And Dream Drop Distance that Xemnas says to Sora that are interesting. When they're in the Tron world, because we'll go to the Tron world, it's for the second Tron movie, he mentions like how his heart is like a box. And you better make sure what's in your heart is in the label, you know what I mean? The context in there, make sure the right label and stuff like that. There's a lot of talk about Sora as a heart in general, which is really weird. But then again, we have to think of and one scene with young Xehanort, he comes up in a cathedral and he goes, "Hypocrite, you're the one who's turned your heart into a prison." And in the background you see Vanitas without his helmet. I'm going to get to Vanitas in a minute. We also know at this point in the story, God. See, time travel is so hard to explain. It's easy to talk about, but it's hard to explain in aloud. A little sore in general. I'm going to be bouncing all over the place as I keep sighing. Plus, I'm pretty tired. Dream Drop Distance is, if you believe it or not, a very short game, but it's very meat heavy, so it's like hard to dissect. I talked about how the heart contained boxes. Xemnas, it's also interesting. Okay, let's get to the second form of time travel. Okay, I'm tired of dancing around this crap. I already explained Xehanort's form of time travel and how he can easily break through it. So you have to be a bodiless thing, just a heart that moves straight through vacuum of time, forwards and backwards. You cannot change it. Whatever you see will always happen, has happened, and happens. Paradoxes are not allowed. That's what that dude's there for. Because that guy saw the future and created 5 books and didn't give a 5th book to his 6th apprentice, Luxu, Xigbar, my favorite man, okay? He knows the Master of Masters, the creator of the Keyblade War. And he even mentions to young Xehanort, we've found this out due to some trailers for the new DLC for Kingdom Hearts 3, why don't you use the power of waking? Now, due to the only person who knows the power of waking at this moment that I know of, and can spam it, is Sora. But the power of waking comes at a very heavy cost. Young Xehanort even says he won't use that, I believe, because it's too dangerous. That's why Xehanort came up with this skill, this method of time travel. It's also worth noting Yen Sid probably knew the consequences of using the power of waking, because during this exam he said this is a very unorthodox method. This is not how we usually do the Mark of Mastery exam, but we gotta have it. We need the power of waking. The power of waking in itself is a form of time travel. There's an event that happens in KH3 that story uses the power of waking to reset it so that event didn't happen. I'm not going to spoil it because it's a very awesome event, but in itself, the power of waking that Sora is able to achieve and get is a form of time travel that has very, very bad repercussions. Young Xehanort told him in KH3, "It's too late for you, Sora. You've used the power of waking too much." Young Xehanort, actually, for being as much of a jackass as he is, was fairly decent on exposition to Sora. And I feel sorry for Xemnas. I think Xemnas pitied Sora at certain points in DDD. We also learn of the sigil mark in DDD. The sigil, the X, the Kai symbol. It's a mark that marks Xehanort's vessels, or if you're important, practically. Sora has the mark on him in DDD. Riku has the X mark, sigil mark on him in KH1. Terra has the mark on him. A lot of people have had this, main characters to some degree that are connected to it, have all had the mark. Alright. That recluse and the reclusive symbol is they use that mark as a tracker in DDD to track Sora down. When I really was examining some of DDD, it looked like this was a test, and I think Zigbar must have had a play to do win DDD, because he was dropping expositions here or there, or just being Zigbar. But I think DDD was the prelude to harden Sora to what he will become or could become. And DDD also gave Sora a lot of character development. He learned the horrible truth of nobodies, that nobodies actually are people. They aren't just a freaking heartless husk. So there's that. Zeminis flat out tells them that we can rid the body. Alright, talk to you later, Dust. I see ya. Zeminis tells him in DDD that you can rid the heart, we can split the heart and body in two, but a heart will always grow back, so we were never without hearts. I, Xehanort, told you a lie to get you to do your job, and found some of them were adequate. It's also included that this would be Organization 13's last mission in DDD, and Zigbar tells him Sora uses borrowed power. Borrowed power. Makes me wonder there. Why would Zigbar know that? It's also worth noting, I'm just going to say this right now because this is a spoiler for KH3, but I don't care. Zigbar's Luxu. Luxu was in this era that man is. Luxu was the apprentice to the Master of Masters. Now, let's get to the Master of Masters form of time travel. Because the Master of Masters can use time travel. At the end of this movie, he literally says, I didn't give you that book, Luxu, because I want to prevent any form of paradox from happening. Master of Masters is probably the biggest jackass there is, too, in this setting. Now, it's also worth noting, the Master of Masters in the Age of Fairy Tales also speeded up the Keyblade War from happening, but in the latest Union Cross DLC, he says the Keyblade War had happened when he was a boy. Was happening already when he was a boy, so I'm not entirely sure if the Keyblade War is active in Union Cross because I haven't gotten very far, but I don't think it is. I think a Keyblade War happened in the Master of Masters' life. Now, what did Sora live through, or has been seen, happens? A Keyblade War happens in KH3. Sora sees the Keyblade War, the horrors that are involved in the Keyblade War, everything that happens in the Keyblade War. Now, if someone has the access to the ability of time travel and figures out that they can alter time to a degree, this is what getting into what Sora is, and time travel in general. What if Sora spammed the power when what happened to him at the end of H, which you'll see, and managed to go far back as he could? Because his form was almost without restriction. It was even stated he created a new timeline. Not just one time, multiple timelines, like the timeline theory. And I hate it. I'm not even going to go to Steins Gate and how Steins Gate makes the timeline theories work. But Sora may have accidentally created a new timeline with his power of waking using. So what if, say, you've seen how horrible Keyblade War is, throughout your journeys, you find horrible truths, and in the next game, you become pretty hardened and jaded, and a lot of bad things happen to you to the point that you might break, and probably become a bit of a cynical person. I'm referring to all the Sora that Sora is probably going to be going through. If he spammed the power of waking and is able to physically time travel, like full body time travel, not your heart, but your body, why can't he go back to the earliest point in history before the worlds were split and fractured? That's why I say the Master of Masters dropping the bomb saying, Keyblade War happened when I was a boy. That boy, the Master of Masters, has yet to take off his hood. We don't know who the Master of Masters is, but I have a very sneaking suspicion it might be Sora. And I would find that very ironic if the main character, the main Disney face, was indeed the puppet master behind the screens the whole time. Because one of the things he is able to see the future with is the Keyblade. And the Keyblade he uses it. It's called the gazing eye, and if you notice in the design of some Keyblades, they all have an eye in them. That was the Master's eye that he ripped out when he passed down the Keyblades and created Keyblades to give to the safe apprentice. The Masters created the Keyblade concept. Now, Sora has borrowed power and has gotten the Keyblade. I'm pretty sure by the time it's saying he knows the Keyblade ceremony. So if he really went through, and some of this could be off screen that we didn't see or know about from the time frame that we are unaware of, he could have heard of the Keyblade casting ceremony. So if he did use the power of waking, go way back in the age of fairy tales, like you see this dude here right here, he's a lot older, wiser, and also has probably been spent time in purgatory because of one thing the Master of Masters' future self doesn't want happening is time paradoxes, which Sora accidentally creates via his power of waking, which is a form of time travel. We didn't find that out till later here about the time travel thing. This is why I said time travel in itself has always been used as a narrative cheat. You can cheat in almost every way possible if you use time travel in your stories. That's why I didn't like it when it was introduced in DD and was very irritated. But some of it did fill in plot holes. Now, also I did say if Sora is the Master of Masters, holy crud, man, Sora, it would make sense. But why do I say it could be him? Well, the gazing eye that's in every Keyblade is said to be the Master's eye. He embeds his eye through the first Keyblade he passed to Lux to, and then so forth and so forth. And that was how he was able to see the future for so far, because his eye saw through every apprentice, the person that had it. Basically, however far the Keyblade was passed along, that he first passed, since he put Sora, or Master has his eye in every Keyblade, he can see as far as it needs to go. Or as far as it can go. It's like a square. He's constantly seeing it, but he can't interact with it anymore. He can't change it. So if this is Sora and he doesn't mess with time anymore, like, paradoxing or what he does in KH3, he uses this method, the gazing eye method, to literally see the future and know how to prevent it and all sorts of other stuff. He knows he can't prevent it, but he can speed it up or whatever, which is what the Master does. Now, why do I say Sora is also unique? Well, in KH2, which I'm going to stop streaming that because the person who requested these streams, I finally procured him a bunch of copies of the KH2 movie format, and now we're just going to skip straight into recoded DDD and this movie here. This movie here I'll play after basically tomorrow and then do DDD, because we're just dropping a lot of DDD stuff in this here. Why is Sora unique, and what is Sora? Honestly, I don't know what Sora is. Young Xehanort hints so much about Sora being a weird entity in the first place, along with Xigbar. Xigbar even says, duh, you're powerful because of the people you know and are associate. They gave you power. That's the only reason you're powerful. Which would make sense, but then again, that's also following the lines of the Chauvin trope. My friends are my power. I can't stand that trope. It's one of my least favorite tropes used, but I've always said there's nothing bad with the trope as long as it's pulled off right. Now, as I said, I really wish I could really look back this, but this is a live stream. Young Xehanort gives a lot of information, and Xigbar gives a lot of information in DDD. We only know of what we know of Masters because of Union Cross in this movie right here. But the eye on every thing that I've seen it on, or I've looked at it on a few things, has been a certain shade of blue. What are Sora's eyes color? And if the eye itself is literally ripped out of the socket and put in to a Keyblade to see as far into the future, that would definitely mean Sora's eyes are blue. And as I said, if Sora used the power of waking to go far back as possible, decide never to physically mess with time again, and uses this method of the eye to see it, and he's like, I'll explain more just about Master himself, and if he's not Sora, when we get to this movie here. You could do a lot of things with that. By just being able to see whatever. That's beside itself. That's why the theory I have of the Master being Sora is it's a mundane theory. I'm not the first to come up with it, but I think it could be highly plausible. Considering Sora right now is in purgatory, and when we saw a shot of it, we saw the Master looking down over purgatory, and it stated purgatory, the purgatory that Sora's at, he's basically in hell, the waiting room. The Master rules over that territory, and he only puts people who mess with time in that territory. Now, what if you did that to your past self, to harden your past self even more, to become a more jaded person, to become the person like the Masters? Kind of a fulfilling prophecy in a way. It's very complex when it comes to time travel, interacting with yourself and avoiding yourself in general, because you could have a little paradoxes. But another thing about Sora is I want to get into Vanitas. Vanitas, without his helmet, looks exactly like Sora with black hair. Spoilers for KH3. There's a scene in Vanitas where Vanitas talks to Sora and says, Sora, you define me, just like Dentist defined me. It's like basically, and Vanitas admits what I am is darkness, and he dissipates. But what if Vanitas went back into Sora? Because it's kind of stated Sora's heart's like a box. If Vanitas has a heart, what if he went into Sora to balance out all the light he has? Because remember, Sora has a ton of light in him. Like a ton. And he can't be corrupted. He's very hard to corrupt. He's yet to be corrupted by darkness. Yes, indeed, he falls into darkness. Falls into it. But he has avoided the corruption thanks to Ventus's armor encasing his body. So, that prevented the darkness from ever touching and corrupting his heart. So what if, when Ventus is free and all this happens, Vanitas also rests in Sora's heart, and that's why whenever you transform in KH2, you go into that berserker, ultra super powerful, heartless form. Just a theory I thought I'd throw out there. I would think it would be interesting if Vanitas was inside Sora. It's also worth noting in DDD, you see Vanitas talking to Sora through Xehanort as a projection that Sora is seeing. So, there's that. I would think that would be it's an interesting theory that I had that Vanitas, I've heard this theory too, that Vanitas is part of Sora and he is the balancing point where Sora himself is the bunch of light. Vanitas in there, being as he looks exactly like Sora but with dark hair, is the dark. Yin and Yang concept. They balance each other out. One of the things Xehanort wanted was perfect balance. So, as I said, I honestly think, what is Sora? I think he's the Master of Masters. I think the Master of Masters, in that we see in Union Cross, is an older Sora that is much more jaded, much more cynical, much more things, because he's been through a nightmare zone. If I ever procure a copy of KH3, you will see the nightmare. Sora's journey is not adventure like in KH2. No, it's a really, 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 really downer. As a matter of fact, even Dream Drop Distance was kind of a downer at some points when I was going back for information on analyzing it. Now, it's also worth noting that in Dream Drop Distance, that Sora was basically trapped in a twofold dream. We also have the Inception problem, because I'm going to have to explain dreams and the concept how they work when we get to DDD movie format, which will be fun. But I figured getting this out of the way of explaining what Sora is and all that other stuff will make sense. And it's theorized, people are theorizing that the new timeline that is formed is a timeline without Sora for the Keyblade War because of his actions. But let's see when the DLC comes out how that's handled. It's also worth noting right now that I'm going to say, if my patron, the one who requested this, look up Luxord, the British guy, the guy with the blonde haired. He has the mastery power over time. There's a scene in the KH3 where he hands Sora a card and he says, you know, it's a wild card, it might come useful. With Sora being in purgatory, that card in Luxord might literally be his get out of jail free card. Ha ha ha, Nomura. That is very, very trollish and clever if that is actually what that card was for. It was never explained, the card was, so the DLC will explain it. Hopefully. It's also worth noting that what happens to this town that you play in Union Cross is very sad, because we see the fate of it in Noctis Dr. Calum. Ugh. The Keybladers home, Ericus and Xehanort's Keyblade younger days world, I would say, which I still want to know more about, but we'll find out then. I've explained basically everything I have down here. Now, the notes I have look longer than they are to actually talk about, because there's some stuff here that I could, but don't need to. Now, I do want to mention the concept of fate. Fate in itself it's fate. I don't really like the concept of fate, because then it takes away the concept of free will. It means if you hear that clap my hands, I was always going to clap my hands. That means I can't clap my hands twice because I don't have the free will to clap my hands twice. Very mundane example. It takes free will and throws it out the window. So, if all these events were fated to happen, like Xehanort gives that speech I just gave earlier, where's the dang note again? The broken boy that failed to pick the blade, the misguided master who failed to save her friend, and the feckless youth who became my new vessel. He says I merely guided them to their proper fate, which would imply all the horrors and all the tragedies that happened to Ventus, Aqua, and Terra were all going to happen regardless, and Xehanort was fully aware of it due to his time-traveling machinations. Oh. But at what point and what age Xehanort used the time travel to come back to, it's very vague. Because, like I said, your heart moving back and forth. I wonder if by birth by sleep events happens, Xehanort has a ton of backup plans. He's a brilliant tactician. That's factually very stated. If all these backup plans he was finally using, because his one hasty plan, as he calls what happened in birth by sleep, backfired. So they went for plan B. So it is highly possible that Xehanort no longer uses this form of method of time travel. He used it once to teach his younger self, and then set it up for the meet that is to be happen in Dream Drop Distance, and Dream Drop Distance happens, and he no longer actually time travels per se. If that is the case, that would clearly make sense of why he doesn't know what will happen at the end game of KH3. But KH3 is KH3. It's also worth noting, as much as I bash KH3, the gameplay in that game is so fun. I had a blast with the gameplay, and that's about it. I've explained how Sora could be the Master of Masters, and how Sora, if Ventus I think I've basically explained everything I need to explain on time traveling that will happen in DDD. The major bulk of it. I'm still going to rant and rave about it when we get to DDD probably tomorrow, but this was fairly more shorter than I thought. And yeah, I'll have the thumbnail basically with the background of friends are my power for this. But I just wanted to show you that tall hooded dude, that's the Master of Masters, and my theory is, just like some other people's theory is, that the Master of Masters is an older Sora who's been through a lot of crud and seen a lot of things that take place after KH3. And I'll explain why, if Master of Masters is a pretty horrible. Well, he's not as horrible as Xehanort, but he ranks right up there. Or Yen said, I put him as a third person. He's not a villain per se. I'd say he's more of like an anti-hero-ish person. I don't know. He falls in a very grayish category. It's also worth noting it was theorized forever that the Master of Masters was Xigbar, but it turns out Xigbar was Luxu, and so possibility of him being Sora now that we know Luxu is Xigbar is pretty high, considering that the eye is always blue in every Keyblade. Take a look at it. You'll notice it. Well, this is your host, Matterveer, signing off. I think Kingdom Hearts, What is Sora, and Time Travel, this small little vid should be fairly good. And the only reason I didn't use my camera, where you can actually see my face, is because I had no idea how long this could go for, and my camera can only control up to a certain minute before it takes up too much space, and then I have problems. I'll see you all tomorrow for the stream. Enjoy this short video on my theory of what Sora is, and that he may have been the Master Masters, and how time travel works, because boy oh boy, it's going to play a big factor. Young Xehanort's going to play a big factor in KH3, and a lot in Dream Drop Distance, which we'll be covering probably tomorrow or Sunday. We'll cover it. Have a nice night, everyone. Leave a thumbs up, thumbs down, subscribe if you like this at all, because if you like these theory-ish videos, please subscribe or leave a comment down below if you wanted me to make videos like this with a paused background and no wording, like what we had this format I have right here, just explaining lore or theories involving KH in general that I've heard of and I take no credit for or can add to. Leave them in the comment section down below. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Have a great night. See ya on the next stream.